Florida shocks Texas in the swamp. Georgia bounces back in a big way against Kentucky, and the Crimson Tide keep rolling. We're going to talk about it all on our episode today, the reactions and power rankings right here on the SEC Recap. It is great to be in the SEC. Welcome back to the reaction episode of the SEC Recap Podcast. This is your weekly home for stats, storylines, some numbers talk across the SEC. I'm your host, Ben Warren. We are counting down our Week 6 SEC Power Rankings as we do from 16 all the way to number 1. Taking a look at who is breaking down, who is trending up, and who's got a real shot to make a run here. So grab a drink. It is Sunday morning. We are live here on YouTube. So I've got my cup of coffee. Grab whatever beverage you prefer, however you prefer to chug your podcast, either on YouTube or Spotify. Hopefully you're joining us here at some point on YouTube so you can take advantage of all the graphics and stuff I'm going to show on screen. But hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Let's get into it. Week 6 in the SEC right here on the SEC Recap. Starting at number 16, the Kentucky Wildcats. They kind of fall off at the bottom of this week's rankings again after a 35-14 road loss in Athens to the Georgia Bulldogs. They were down 14-0 before they could blink, and it just never really mounted a recovery or anything that resembled a recovery. Carter Boley threw for 2. Can't remember exactly what that stat line was. Yeah, 225 he ends up with and throwing for 2. But Kentucky's ground game just held to 45 yards by the Dogs' defense. Some costly mistakes erasing any upset hopes. And Kentucky just mismanaging the clock in general before halftime. They miss a chip shot, 26-yard field goal as time expires in the second quarter. Mark Stoops shooting down buyout rumors after the game, insisting there's zero chance I'm walking away, no quit. We'll see. Wildcats are now 2-3, 0-3 in the SEC. They've now lost 16 straight to Georgia, dating back to 2009. They're seeking their first conference win of the season. Quite a bit to talk about with Kentucky. I posted this on Twitter throughout the day yesterday that since 2003, they only have 7 SEC wins. And Mark Stoops is, in his 12th or 13th year in that contract, $9 million a year. If I were anywhere close to that program, I would be disgusted with the amount of money that Mark Stoops is receiving, and for those on-field results that we're receiving. I think it's definitely time for a change. A lot of people feel that way. I know. At number 15, the Arkansas Razorbacks had an off week. They were idle in week 6, so they're going to sit at number 15 without a game to recap. 2-3, 0-1 in the SEC. They're going to use that open date to regroup after a challenging early start or challenging early schedule. They will return to action under interim head coach Bobby Petrino next Saturday at Tennessee, looking to snap a 3-game losing streak and get that first SEC win of 2025. Tennessee will also be coming off of a bye week as well. Similar story here at number 14. South Carolina Gamecocks also had an open date. 3-2, 1-2 in the SEC. They come off of a win over Kentucky and likely leaning into this bye week to heal up, rest up, get healthy. They will face a very tough road test at LSU on October 11th in hopes of kind of trying to climb out of this bottom tier of the SEC. Another one to talk about here at number 13. I don't think they move much from my rankings last week. The Mississippi State Bulldogs. They are dropping a spot after having to go on a tough road test. 31-9. They fall at Kyle Field against Texas A&M Aggies. The first half of that game, very tight. They actually led 3-0 for most of the first half. But in the second half, it was all Aggies. That offense stalled out. They just couldn't capitalize on any opportunities. A&M's defense just really kind of blew it wide open. for the Aggies. They allowed just 219 total yards and only 14 first downs. On third downs, Mississippi State went 1 for 10. A stat that kind of tells a story of those struggles sustaining drives there in the night game. The lone Bulldog touchdown came in garbage time, essentially, in the fourth quarter. Mississippi State is now 4-2. They are winless in the SEC. They fall to Tennessee and then on the road at A&M. 14 straight conference games. Mississippi State has lost dating back to 2023. Still seeking that first SEC win under Jeff Lebby. They're going to try to regroup during an upcoming bye, I think, before visiting Florida. Again, that's going to be a tough test in the Swamp. Florida coming off a big win this weekend as well on the 18th. Speaking of the Gators, let's talk about them. They're number 12 in my rankings, jumping a few spots this week. What a difference a bye week can make for a team. Florida stuns, and I do believe this was a stunner because my model did not pick this, and I don't think a lot of people picked this as an upset. I thought it could be a good environment. I figured fans would be up and out for this game. Did not think it would play out this way. They stunned number 9 Texas 29-21 in the Swamp, and it really wasn't that close. They snap a 3-game losing streak. Dallas Wilson provides a huge spark. He really comes online in this game. 6 passes, 111, 2 touchdowns, including a spectacular 55-yarder, catch and run, tiptoes the sideline, and powers through 2 more defenders into the end zone. DJ Lagway looked probably the best he's looked all season. 289 yards passing and those 2 touchdowns to Wilson. Playing with confidence, kind of that us against the world swagger that you like to see, man. Equally important, the Gators defense absolutely harassed Arch Manning all afternoon. 6 sacks, 2 interceptions. Texas ain't it, man. Texas offense is bad. The defense was fine, but this was a bad Florida offense, and they did whatever they wanted to the Texas defense. So I really don't know what to make of Texas this year, except I'm out on them. I'm out on Texas until further notice. This upset is probably going to relieve some of that pressure on Billy Napier. I think until the next week, we'll kind of see what it looks like when Mississippi State comes to town. But maybe Florida catches a little bit of a breather here. They do have to go on the road to Texas A&M, though, this week. That's going to be a challenge, especially considering the way we saw Texas A&M play last night. At number 11, the Auburn Tigers. Now, another bye week. Again, half the league was off this week. They hold steady 3-2, 0-2 in the SEC. They've had a pretty mid start under Hugh Freeze, both SEC games so far being kind of rock fights, but ending in losses. The bye week comes at a good time for the Tigers, I think. They're going to need all hands on deck next Saturday. They host number 12 Georgia. We'll see where Georgia ends up in the AP. Not that that matters, but it's a top 15, top 10 Georgia team under the lights at Jordan-Hare. A big-time rivalry matchup. Auburn's been good defensively. They've been utter dog crap defensively, so we'll see what they look like there. Number 10, Mizzou, idle as well. They are silently one of the SEC's last unbeaten teams, 5-0, 1-0 in the SEC. Their early schedule was very, very favorable. But they've taken care of business. They've cracked the top 20 nationally. I think we'll learn a lot more about Mizzou coming out of the bye. They will put that perfect record on the line in week 7 when number 1, well, I don't know if they'll be number 1, but when Alabama comes to Columbia, they're number 1 in my power rankings. Just a sneak peek there. They go to Como. Circle that. That's going to be a showdown. Major opportunity for the Tigers to prove they belong among the SEC elite. So very tough home matchup against the Crimson Tide coming up for Mizzou. We'll put them to the test. We'll see what they're made of. And falling to number 9 after that, I'm just going to call it as it is. This is an embarrassing road loss, man. Texas, for all the talent and hype around their season, should have handled business on the road in the Swamp. They didn't. So they're going to take a tumble, 29-21 upset loss at Florida, 3-2, 0-1 in the SEC. No Power 4 wins on the season. One of the biggest disappointments of the year so far. Remember, this was a team that was preseason number 1. In week 1, they went on the road to Ohio State. It's a 14-7 game. Arch Manning had a couple moments. I mean, he threw for 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 really costly picks and misfired on a lot of deep shots. But he was under duress all game. I mean, that Florida defensive front totaled 6 sacks on you. That's going to rattle you no matter who you are. Some offensive line struggles there. He even botched a trick play, like a double pass. Had a receiver wide open, just kind of gets overthrown. Sark praised the team for kind of fighting back. But again, this game was not as close as the final score makes it look there, 8-point game. They're going to look to regroup. I think they have the Red River rivalry. That's a tongue twister against Oklahoma. A game that suddenly becomes must win for the Longhorns. Now, Oklahoma obviously going to be without John Mateer. I think Oklahoma is still a better team than Texas, but any kind of rivalry game, especially one like that, you never know what's going to happen. We will pre-cap that. I've already run the model predictions for week 7. We'll share those on Wednesday morning on the live stream, so make sure you tune in for that there. That's going to round out the top half of the power rankings, y'all. We're going to get into the top half here, starting with the LSU Tigers. But before we do, real quick, I do this all for free. I'm not sponsored. I don't do any ad reads on this show. I just sling a few t-shirts and stuff like that. So head on over to my Bonfire store, bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. Check out my Saturdays merch. I'm showing off the Oklahoma here on screen, but I've got something for every single team on there, including my Legacy series, the SEC Pride stuff. It's all really, really good. Fits great, feels great. Comes in t-shirts, long sleeve, hoodie. Have had really great feedback from all the folks who have picked them up. Some merchandise. It is getting into fall. We're in October. You know what that means, guys. It's bonfire season. So head on over to bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. Take advantage of some awesome hoodies and merch there. All right. At number 8, LSU, another team with an open date. They come off that really tough loss at Ole Miss the week prior. They're 4-1, 1-1 in the SEC. They're hopefully using this bye week to lick their wounds and refocus. But I've kind of been off on LSU all season. And I've talked about it on just about every episode. Where they were efficiency-wise was not SEC championship contender level, nowhere near college football playoff championship contender. That defense has shown some vulnerability now. The offense obviously is a weak spot. So hopefully that staff spends the week making some adjustments. They'll return in week 7 for a home date with South Carolina. Now, despite that hiccup, LSU is very much alive in the SEC race, but you can't afford another conference loss, especially with Alabama and A&M still looming on the schedule. A team that continues to play really, really solid despite the outcome of week 6. At number 7 is the Vanderbilt Commodores. Now, I want to point some stuff out here. You see the jump from number 8 to number 7 here. These are my normalized rankings, how my model separates these teams. And you can derive point differentials from these rankings, by the way. I'll maybe talk about that on another episode. This is a power ratings model, right? This is not a resume ranking. You can actually use this to handicap matchups. So you see the jump from LSU 64.79 to Vanderbilt 75.66. So a pretty big jump here as we start to get into like this top third or so of the SEC. And what you're going to see here, 7 through 5, I believe, 7 through 4, these are some really, really tight scores. So the spreads that separate like 7 through 5 is not large at all. It's really, really not large at all. Number 7, after that first loss of the season, the 5-0 magical start comes to an end, 30-14 at Alabama. They're now 5-1, 1-1 in the SEC. They actually came out swinging in Tuscaloosa. Cedric Alexander ripped off a 65-yard touchdown run to put Vandy up 7-0 early. Diego Pavia had 183 yards passing, 58 rushing, but he turns the ball over twice in the red zone, 1 interception, 1 fumble, and that cost the team critical points. In the second half, Vandy's ground game got stonewalled. I mean, this is a team, y'all, that has had like the best offensive overall efficiency in the SEC on the year, and Alabama absolutely stifles it. After rushing for 126 on 12.7 yards per carry in the first half, they managed only 9 yards rushing after halftime. Complete adjustment by Bama's defense. And despite the 16-point loss, Vanderbilt showed flashes that they can compete with top teams. They just got outclassed here, especially in a road game. They're just roster-wise, Vanderbilt is not there, despite Diego Pavia doing all that he does for that team. He's not a great downfield passer. The short game, short yardage stuff, the design quarterback runs, the RPOs, that's really kind of his strength, more of the dink and dunk style. I hate using that term, but it kind of is what it is. Third downs and red zone execution, I mean, that was the difference. So Vanderbilt is going to get a much needed week off before they will host number 13 LSU on October 18th. We will see if they can bounce back from that and continue their surprising rise. A couple weeks ago, I posted a model run. That's going to look a little bit different now, but I posted a model run of that LSU at Vanderbilt game. Maybe I'll preview that one, even though we're still a couple weeks out. I don't think people are ready to have the conversation about Vanderbilt being favored at home against LSU and Vanderbilt potentially dominating LSU in Nashville. Maybe some people are ready to have that conversation. Not sure everybody is. More on that later. Check it out. 75.66, a score of 76.68. Really tight here. Texas A&M Aggies. Now, a dominant performance for the Aggies at home against Mississippi State. They completely take care of business in week 6. They dispatched Mississippi State 31-9 at Kyle Field. They improved to 5-0, 2-0 in the SEC. Aggies very much alive for the SEC title. Really in the driver's seat for the SEC title. Was not the quickest start. That was a slow first half, but they blow the thing wide open in the second. Aggies dominated. KC Concepcion was an absolute star. 2 touchdown passes from Marcel Reed. That first was a 34-yard snag in traffic before halftime that gave A&M the lead. They would hold on to that lead, and then Concepcion would add a 2-yard touchdown in the third quarter to extend that margin. Ruben Owens, Le'Veon Moss, very good. They limited Mississippi State to 219 total yards and a paltry 1 of 10 conversion rate on third downs. Through 2 SEC games, or in 2 SEC games that they've played, A&M's defense has allowed just 9 points each, and they've been lights out in key situations. I think if there's one nitpick, it's penalties. They were flagged 7 times in the first half after a slew of flags last week as well. Still, A&M looking every bit the contender. They will put that unbeaten record on the line next week when Florida visits College Station for a high-profile clash. Maybe that's a Florida team that's coming in with a little bit of hope and optimism and momentum. Could low-key be a great game. Check out this differential as we move to the number 5 team, the Tennessee Volunteers, 76.69. I don't know that I've ever seen this in the model ever. A 100th of a point difference separating these two teams, 76.68, 76.69. Tennessee has an open date, so the model's not going to move them very much, right? They're more going to shuffle everything around or around them. The Vols sit at 4-1, 1-1 in the SEC, coming off a hard-fought overtime win at Mississippi State. Yes, a team that the number 6 team in my rankings dominated, but the model looks at more than just resume. It looks at efficiencies and a whole lot of other things. So Josh Heupel's squad using the bye week to get healthy, correct some mistakes. Hopefully they're getting some defensive players back. Turnovers and pass defense have obviously been the key issues here. The Vols will be back in action next Saturday at home in General Neyland's House of Football, Neyland Stadium, as Arkansas under interim head coach Bobby Petrino come to town with Alabama still ahead on the schedule, Oklahoma still ahead on the schedule. Tennessee is going to look to build some momentum against the Razorbacks and stay alive in the SEC and the college football playoff hunt. Vols can really only afford one more loss on the schedule. If that loss is on the road at Alabama, that's probably okay. If that loss is at home, again, to a really good Oklahoma team, that's probably okay. That means you need to take care of the games you're supposed to win. You need to take care of Arkansas at home. That's going to start this week. Hopefully they get some players back on the defensive side to help them out. I don't have any concerns about the offense whatsoever. That offense has been really, really good. 78.48, 1.5 point spread here as we jump from 5 to 4, a little bit of separation. The Georgia Bulldogs, they rise again in the rankings. And now that we're through week 6, you're going to see these rankings really start to normalize. I talked about this when we did the first episode in week 1. Things are going to be volatile through week 5, week 6. Once we've got a lot of data, we've essentially got almost half the data on the season. You're going to see these rankings normalize. So the top 5 or 6 are not going to move a whole lot. The bottom 5 or 6 are not going to move a lot. Might be a little bit of shuffling in the middle still. So look for some consistency here in the power rankings model through the end of the year. Georgia rises to number 4 in the rankings after a very convincing 35-14 bounce back over Kentucky in Athens. This was the bounce back you wanted to see following the prior week's loss. You lose at home to the Crimson Tide, a very good Crimson Tide team that I was never down on despite that week 1 loss. I picked Alabama to win that game on the road at Georgia. I also picked Georgia to dominate and cover here versus Kentucky at home, and they do. I think that spread was 20.5. I picked them to cover. They do so. They came out sharp, physical from the opening kickoff. Gunnar Stockton, an absolute dual threat weapon, scoring Georgia's first 2 touchdowns on design runs. Stockton tallied 48 yards rushing, hit Cash Jones for a 16-yard touchdown pass later in the game. Dillon Bell, very versatile, 2 touchdown runs on end-around plays, becoming a true offensive Swiss knife for Georgia. I think that's what they wanted him to be. They dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides, 180 rushing while holding Kentucky to 45 yards on the ground. Georgia has not given up back-to-back regular season losses since 2016. They were not about to start this season. Defense even notched its first fumble recovery of the year, pins Kentucky deep with some excellent special teams play. Georgia now 4-1, 2-1 in the SEC, showcasing some resiliency and remaining very much where they need to be. According to Kirby Smart, they will go to Auburn, Deep South's oldest rivalry, carrying some confidence that mid-season stumble is behind them and that they can cruise through the remainder of this season. Little bit more here. Now, despite being without Mateer, Model really liked what it saw. Now, it was Kent State. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that. That's basically an FCS game. I would say no offense, but I do mean some offense. Kent State's awful. Number 3 in my rankings after hammering Kent State 44-0 in Norman. It's a non-conference tune-up game against an overmatched opponent, but they handle that business with ruthless efficiency. Starting QB Mateer obviously is out still off the hand surgery. Michael Hawkins Jr. filling in brilliantly, 4 touchdowns, 3 passing, 1 rushing. Led OU to points on those first 5 possessions, 162 through the air, 33 on the ground. Look, I'm not going to break down this game. It's a game they should have won. Everybody expected them to win and run away with. I think you appreciate that the team competes to that same standard regardless of who the opponent is. And that's exactly the mindset you're going to need as you now turn your focus to the Red River rivalry. This is a titanic showdown as Texas is going to await the Sooners next week in this matchup. All things accounted for, I still think Oklahoma is the better team despite not having Mateer at quarterback after what I've seen from Texas. But this is a major rivalry game. Anything can happen. Oklahoma needs absolute focus. But we'll see what the model thinks in our precap episode on Wednesday in that game, which means at number 2, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. Despite a bye week, they're 5-0, 3-0 in the SEC. One of the maybe a surprise to some, not to others, front runner in the conference so far. Boast an undefeated record that includes a signature win over LSU last week in Oxford. Lane Kiffin's offense, as you'd expect, has been balanced and explosive. Surprisingly behind Trinidad Chambliss, who was basically a D3 quarterback up until this year. They do have a pretty brutal stretch still to come, but they're looking every bit the contender. They're in the college football playoff conversation, taking care of business each week. The off week is likely going to help some banged up players recover. We'll see if the Rebels can pick up where they left off. I think they host Washington State in a non-con this coming week in week 7. You'll look for them to just kind of maintain and do everything the right way. Which means at number 1, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think they've earned it. Back-to-back wins against SEC road opponent or SEC opponents. You do one on the road at Georgia, and then you hold serve at home against a top 20 Vanderbilt team. 30-14 that win over number 16 Vandy. It wasn't flawless by any means, but it was another step forward in a team that's regaining momentum despite a lot of doubt that they had after week 1. Ty Simpson showing once again why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, throwing for 340, 2 touchdowns. Very sharp, 23 of 30. Third game above 75% completion rate in the last 4. Shakes off an early INT to lead Alabama's offense effectively. They really kind of take the lead in the second half in this game. Jam Miller providing a lot of balance, I think. He gets 136 on the ground and a touchdown. Despite giving Vandy that early 7-0 lead, the Alabama defense really stiffened up, tightened up, and pitched a shutout in the second half. They forced 2 red zone turnovers, interception, and a fumble. And these were really game-altering plays. They completely choked the Commodores' rushing attack after halftime. They hold Vanderbilt to just 9 rushing yards in the third and fourth quarter. Really hard-nosed effort there. Alabama has now ripped off 4 straight wins, including back-to-back victories over top 20 SEC opponents. I think they should move up from that top 10 ranking, especially with Penn State and Texas losing. Tide is now 4-1, 2-0 in the SEC. They head back to Columbia to face number 19 Mizzou this next week. I think that could be a great game. If they could keep improving, avoid any letdowns, I think they look poised to make another SEC title run. And of course, they're in contention for the SEC or the college football playoff. Guys, what do you think? Who's too high? Who's too low in my rankings? Please let me know. I don't care. That's going to do it for this week's SEC recap. What a wild week across the conference and in general. SEC races wide open. We've got a loaded slate next week. Alabama at Mizzou, Georgia at Auburn, and the Red River rivalry. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to like, subscribe, drop your team in the comments. Tell us where you think your squad should be ranked heading into week 7. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Sunday morning. This has been the SEC Recap. We will see you next week.